All right, Russ, we're live.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Excited to have you here. We're gonna give ourselves a few minutes and let people kind of join the webinar. My name is Russ Jeffrey. I'm the director of platform and product strategy here at Duda, and I'm joined by my friend and close partner Jeremy. Jeremy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody, excited to be here. Jeremy Leduc with WooRank. We are a new partner with Russ and Duda. Although we met about a year ago,
That's right.
we took all of the latter half of last year to integrate our SEO auditing tool called WooRank into Duda, and then we went live. We actually went live at the end of January. So
Yeah.
just over a month now, we've been live with the app, and we're really excited to be here.
Yeah. Where's everyone calling in from today? Kaylee, I see your message here. You love Duda. I love Duda too. That's why I've worked here for 11 years. Yeah.
11 years. Oh, good. That's
Jeez.
congrats.
Yeah.
So I'll be going on 10 years here with Bridgeline. Bridgeline's the parent company to WooRank.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm based out of here in the Bay Area. Jeremy, you're just a little south, right?
I'm probably about 2.5, 3 hours south of you, down in little San Luis Obispo.
Yeah. Got it. I'm gonna just kind of chat about a few different things while we wait for some folks to join. I see Michael's from Columbus and Lisa's calling in from California. We have this interesting webinar coming up later this month too, which is it's like with some of the folks from Bing directly who have launched their new chatbot, and search is this really interesting changing environment right now where we really have a brand new interface and a brand new way of interacting, which I think is really exciting. So we're gonna have some folks from the Bing side joining us later this month. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on the changes in search, Jeremy, but it's a super interesting time right now.
Yeah, I mean everything's being flipped on its head. Honestly, obviously, I'm sure you're referring to the fact that Bing is using AI now in chat. I mean the whole chat component, that's the part I love. I mean, obviously the AI piece is the super exciting piece. Everybody wants to talk about that, but really just introducing the ability to chat with your search bar is pretty exciting. It kind of changes it from, you do a quick search and you're like, no, I got that wrong. I got to do it over. Now it's no, just keep refining that search. It really changes the mentality. So, but that, and then of course, just, how is AI going to change SEO and what we're going to be talking about here, which is, your website and how to get it ranked and how to use GA4 to help you understand what you're doing. But that's pretty exciting to think about too, and see what's happening. I know there's lots of folks out there doing testing right now on, they've of course went out and tried it and went to Chat GPT and they grabbed some content and they're now testing 2 different pages. So that's been fun to watch everybody try that out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great time. See, we have there it is. Ashley joining from Portland, a good friend of mine. Laura from Massachusetts. Kaylee calling from London. Susan from Fair Oaks. A lot of folks around the country. This is great. Very cool. I think what will be interesting today, chatting about GA4 is, I think a lot of people are just kind of anxious about the change, of Google Analytics, and people have used the tool now for what it's. I think it came out in 2005 originally, something like that. And this is the biggest change that they've made to it in 15, 20 years of having that product. So it introduces a lot of anxiety, and people have really built up a lot of muscle memory of using GA4 or using Google Analytics, and changing can kind of cause a little bit of anxiety around that. So we kind of hear that from our customers here at Duda and around the industry that folks are kind of looking at it and wanting to make sure they understand it and want to make sure that they're getting the most out of the tool as well. So
yeah. Well, it's actually a perfect segue. If we could bring the deck up, actually, we have a quick history of Google Analytics, which is fun to look at. So we already introduced ourselves, but this is actually a pretty fun slide to start with. So to jump in, I think we've given everybody time, and got people from all over the world. So it's really interesting to look at the evolution of Google Analytics, right? It did start in 2005 with Google purchasing Urchin, and that's actually where UTM comes from. Just Urchin Tracking Module, I think is what that actually stands for. Not that anybody knows that.
I knew that.
But Urchin was great. I loved it. And then they went to Classic, but then of course they went to Universal, and we've all been on Universal, and like you said, we've all got an incredible amount of muscle memory around Universal, you know. But then apps came out and they couldn't figure that out, so they're like, okay, well let's actually create something entirely new for apps. And that's what kind of brings us into, okay, what is GA4 and what are we looking at here? And I just wanted to let's just take a minute and talk at a high level. You know, one of the biggest things, it's actually the last item in the set of bullets we'll start with, is that GA4 brings website and apps together, you know, that data, right? So you don't have to go to two different places for it. You can actually create data streams, and you can start bringing data in across both an app and a website. And that's pretty exciting, because this really speaks to GA4's, one of its big intentions is to really start understanding the customer journey, right? Versus just, you know, how many hits did you get and how many page views did you get? You know, let's actually look at the journey. So let's start at the top of this list and make sure everybody realizes this might be too obvious, but this is truly a brand new platform. Like there's no migration. Your current data, your all those years of Google Universal data is not going to be in GA4. You literally need to set up a GA4 and add it. And Russ will talk about that, making sure everybody understands how to make sure that it's actually set up on their Duda site. But just so everybody knows, I mean, this is literally a brand new application, and your UA data will not be in it. And then I mean, at a really high level, you know, there's this whole thing of privacy safe insights, right? Cookieless browsers, GDPR. So GA4 does address that. It's a completely different data model, which is why it's not an upgrade. It's a completely different software. Just fundamentally the way they're tracking data is completely different. But it does address moving forward. You know, Google did a good job of understanding that we need to move to an entire different way of tracking data, and it has to be, you know, it has to be privacy safe. So that's nice. And then the other thing is kind of speaking to the data model itself. That means there's going to be gaps in knowledge, right? That, you know, that means that we're not tracking as much information about somebody personally. And so what does that mean? That means Google is going to start introducing a lot of predictive AI. And I know GA4, you know, is set up for that. It's set up so that Google can fill in the gaps and actually introduce predictive analytics, make recommendations, and it's not using just your data. It is actually having to use some of its own modeling to give you that recommendation. So, right. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
No, what I was going to say from the technical perspective, like the way Google is tracking now, it's all just single event based, right? In the past, you had one type of event, which was like page views that came in. And then you had other types of events that are like conversion events or other type of tracking events that might happen. Now everything is just one single event. And so Google can look at just that flat structure and then start predicting based off of those individual events that are coming through. Now you can still tag and add additional data onto that, but they're not really looking at it as, hey, this is an individual page view. They're looking at it more of, hey, this is an interaction. This is something they're doing. This is something that we can predict across the board. And having that more flat structure really allows them to view that whole journey more holistically rather than a page view, and then on that page view an event happens, but maybe that event happened in some other place. You know, they didn't really know in the past with the previous structure. So having a little bit of that flatter structure allows them to really predict and get there, you know, a little bit better. And hopefully this sets them up for long-term kind of growth in the product, which would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, think about it. I mean, we just came off of a product that dated back to 2005 5. So, we're gonna be with GA4 a long time now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we get too far into this, we should stop. I want to give you an opportunity to make sure everybody understands, how do I put GA4, on my Duda site? We should definitely cover that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just with the way it works within Duda today is we natively support both the old like universal analytics and also the newer GA4. So if you wanted to start moving your customers over, you can go into GA4, kind of create that new GA4 profile. Google will give you go through a few kind of workflow steps. Google will give you a new ID. Usually it's like G dash something, and then you can copy and paste that, take that into the Duda website, plug it into the site settings in the analytics area, and that will just go ahead, and then you have to republish the site, and that will just start tracking immediately into kind of the new GA4 profile for you. So you don't, there's not a lot of work to do on the Duda side in terms of tracking. It's just kind of copying and pasting that ID and getting it into the website, and Duda has already kind of taken care of the rest. One interesting thing that Duda does, and you can kind of look at, and we can get into this a little bit later too, is we also do track other events into Google Analytics. So things of like a contact form is filled in, or a click to call happens, or a store purchase happens on the website. We also send that data over to GA4 or even the old GA and automatically kind of submit that for them to track and know about. And then inside of Google Analytics, you can set up, kind of conversion events and things like that with those, parameters that are sent in.
So, and then all of your agency partners and all the folks who have logged in, they're used to going directly out to Google, right? And looking at that data.
Yeah, that's totally right. We have basically what I would call is just kind of the straight tags integration, just getting that tracking code on the website and making that available. Duda also has our own analytics module that is not based on Google Analytics. It's kind of our own separate system that we've built and we've maintained, and it's separate. So we automatically track site visits and where the visitors come from, and we have all that kind of basic tracking, but we also integrate with Google, which are kind of two separate things there. So
yeah. That's interesting. I'm just curious if anybody wants to put in the comments, like, are you running GA4 yet? Are you still on Universal? Do you plan on moving over, and when? And I'm looking at my other screen here. We have exactly 120 days and 12 hours until until Universal basically stops processing data, right? What I mean is, like literally, if you were to not go move to GA4, in 120 days, you would log into Universal and the data would stop. It would just not come in anymore. So you definitely need to move to it. And I've been in a few different webinars now. And interestingly, the last one I was on, 70% of the folks in there were not actually running GA4 yet. Now, everybody else was running both. Right, they were obviously, you continue to run Universal, but they were running both. We've got some folks here. We're in the process of moving over. That's great. We just got started. That's great. That's good to hear. Now, one thing, Russ, it's interesting about GA4 is, Universal. I kind of look at it, and I've talked to different customers who were moved into it, and Universal was kind of like a reporting like package, I'll call it. You literally you logged into it, and it had so many canned reports that you didn't really think very much about having to customize it, especially if you're a smaller business and you're not looking to do anything groundbreaking. You go in, you had a canned set of reports, you kind of had the mentality of, hey, this is great, it's right here, I've got my reports, I'm looking at them. But GA4 is not like that. You need to go in there and actually really think about. We're going to talk about that in a couple slides. But that is a big interesting thing is that GA4 does take some work to get in there and think about what do you want to track, because it's so much more sophisticated. it's not just this, open it up and here's all your canned reports. There is some setup work to do. So.
And I think that's one of the difficult parts is it's like a totally new interface. And you have to go and rebuild reports or reset up settings or set up like your referral tracking and make sure, or referral blacklists that don't get transferred over. You have to go through and kind of think about those different things as you're making that switch, especially for agencies who are a lot of folks on the call here. Is they think about how do I report back to clients? What am I showing them, and how am I showing the value that I'm delivering to them? That process is completely changing. Yeah.
Now, I don't know, we haven't talked about this much. I'm just curious if any of your agencies are doing this, but GA4 also did something interesting. Google did with GA4 in that they've made it a lot easier for you to send that data from GA4 out to BigQuery, and then from there, or directly go straight into like a Google Data Studio. So not to segue off too much, but I bring that up just because it's interesting. You were talking about, how does an agency report? And I'm just curious, this means an agency has to really think about, like, am I delivering reports to customers? And I've got some automation set up with Universal, and now I've got to recreate that in GA4. Google did do a good job of making it a lot easier to send that data over to Data Studio. And I know I've talked to some folks who have really said, I'm gonna look at that, and maybe I'm actually gonna use that, and maybe I'm actually gonna integrate that into my business, and maybe use Data Studio to visualize the data there versus say having to recreate the reporting I've already created in Universal.
Yeah, I think there's also some good templates out there for Data Studio that you can leverage and just kind of plug in and hand those off to clients as well. So it might be good to go and look at that and figure out if there's things that you can just kind of leverage that are pre-built by others already.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good nugget that I've heard folks think about. Do I want to recreate everything, or do I want to send people directly into GA4, or it might be easier to go leverage Data Studio. So I want to get to we've got a great slide that kind of talks about how do you think about even starting with GA4. But before we do that, we talked about what GA4 is. I do want to mention what it's not, right? Because Russ and Duda is about building great websites, right? And you've got tons of functionality in there about how to make a site SEO friendly. And obviously you're big on Core Web Vitals, and Anton's going to put up your slide on Core Web Vitals here now that I've said that word. I'm waiting. No, Duda's sites do phenomenal with SEO and Core Web Vitals. And that's why we partnered, is that WooRank is an SEO auditing tool, so we can audit the website and actually make sure you're following best practice. But just to be clear, GA4 is not about, there we go. Thank you, Anton. GA4 is not, this is not about SEO per se, right? This is not changing ranking algorithms, right? This is not an algorithm change where you now have to say, oh, I need to do something from an SEO best practice. And that's really what the WooRank tool does, is it's looking at SEO best practice, and it's saying, hey, when you built this page in Duda, did you follow the 75 different things you need to think about, and did you leverage all the functionality in Duda to make sure you're publishing an SEO optimized site for search engines? So it's not per se, but because you have so much more granular, you have a lot more granular ability to track that user and what they're doing, you're going to have more insight, and that is going to impact how you build web pages and how you optimize those pages. And I think that's, from our standpoint, from WooRank, that's why we're tracking GA4 so closely. That's why we actually in WooRank, you can actually put your you can integrate it to Google Analytics, and we do pull in some of that data so that you can see, like, when you're looking at the page itself and how we audit it, how much traffic did get to this page. I mean, we're looking at all that because folks are going to start asking us, and we know that, and we anticipate that from us, that they're going to start asking more of their SEO auditing tools like WooRank, because they're going to have deeper insight into their website.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it's interesting what you mentioned about GA4 helping you gain kind of deeper insights, because I think you look at it by default. When you go into GA4, you get less reports, but you can really drill deeper a lot quicker using GA4. And actually, I wanted to answer a question here from Andy, who's from Andy, saying, does the new landing page report give you the same data as the old GA, or is it different? I watched something the other day and heard it could be very different data. Yeah, it's going to be different data, right? They're looking at it differently in terms of where does the cycle start, and where does what is that landing page that they're visiting from. And so the new GA4 has the landing pages that come in, and it's basically saying, great, where do people start visiting from, and then what are those journeys that they follow on after the fact there. And so I think that's interesting. Lee also was asking, I'm having issues finding my UTM codes in GA4, and this is one of those things about changing it to kind of a flatter structure, where you go into one of the reports, and what you can now do is you filter for those UTM codes. So like if you had a UTM, medium or UTM campaign attribute that you had assigned there, you can then go and just filter those reports and say, okay, great, I want to filter it just for ones from this source, or just from ones from this campaign, based off of those UTM parameters that are there. So it's a little confusing, because in the old Google Analytics, they would actually list out what those actual campaigns and sources were as kind of a top level, but now they've it's under the filtering, because you're adding extra data onto the actual individual event. It's not kind of a top level data metric. So Lee, I would go and look under the filter options in the reports there as well. Yep.
Awesome. Yep. And the last point down here is, right, everything we're talking about is allowing a marketer, and you said it right out of the gate. I've been playing around more and more with GA4, and I really like it. And GA4 really has been. I mean, Google did a good job of understanding what a marketer needs, and giving a reporting tool that you can really customize. But to me, that speaks to experience, right? Google is all about experience, and that's what they said loud and clear when they came out with Core Web Vitals, is the customer experience is really important. And I feel like they're saying the same thing. We could almost go back to that this slide here, and you could drop Core Web Vitals kind of in this timeline, to me, right? Because Core Web Vitals and GA4 are both saying, hey, marketers, website builders, the user experience is of the utmost importance, and we are delivering you tools to help you build that experience. And that's really, to me, what GA4 is about as well. And I know you guys do a great job with Core Web Vitals, but to me, GA4 and marketers starting to interact with it and get that deeper insight into their customer's journey is only going to help every other marketer build a better experience for the entire customer journey, which forces you here to think about that. What is the customer journey on this website that I've built? So being able to partner with Duda, who already understands Core Web Vitals, and can help educate you on that, and as well as something like this to just build that experience, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's right, because that's ultimately, the end of the day, that's going to be what drives conversions, what drives people to get value out of your website, is what is that experience they receive when they're on it? Do they get the information do they want? Do they click deeper? Do they fill out contact forms? Do they get to that next level? And all of that's driven, from the experience on down. And so looking at, Core Web Vitals looks at kind of, right now, you kind of think about it as the performance experience today is what they're measuring. And GA4 probably, it gives you a little bit more of a holistic view of what's that journey and what are they doing on the site and how are they actually leveraging this, across the board, or how are customers actually using your site and engaging with your site, and what are they doing once they get there. I think both of those, they're very complementary in that sense. They're not measuring the exact same things, but they're complementary aspects of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's that's exactly the term I was looking for. Yeah, because Core Web Vitals, I mean, it's kind of dubbed as the page experience score. So
yeah,
and now that you can dig even deeper, I think GA4 is going to usher in a whole new level of marketer who can really better understand the customer journey. And that's exciting, and that's going to put more pressure on us, Russ, right, as developers of tools.
Bring it on. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. We touched on it a minute ago. How do you actually begin? And so I'm coming back to a point we made, which is that GA4 does not come out of the box with the amount of reports that Universal had, right? So we're not here to literally list out like, here are the reports you need to think about, right? I kind of wanted to go up a level from that and just make sure you understand, get started now, because it's going to take some time to set up GA4 the way you want it and the way you have gotten used to Universal, and GA4 literally makes you start from the beginning. You have to go back to understanding your goals. What is your goal with this website and or your app as well, right? So what is the goal? And what is your measurement strategy? What are you actually looking to measure? Because you have a much more ability to measure exactly what you're looking to do in GA4 than you had, right? And then actually going in there and starting to understand GA4 and then set those up so that you're aligning up the reports you want with your goal and those business goals, right? So you have the KPIs that you want to track. So it major, the big point here, the big takeaway is really understand, as you started working with GA4, you're really going to have to map out, what goals you want to track, and then start learning about GA4 and understanding, okay, can I do this, and how do I go in and build the report towards that goal?
Absolutely. And as an agency, these are the conversations, maybe you already had these conversations if you're just migrating customers over, or these should be the things that you have the conversations early on with your customers about, what's the purpose of this website? What are we measuring? Is it driving online purchases? Is it driving contact form submits? Is it driving calls? How are we doing that? And then setting up these tools to at least track the website side of that, or the the online engagement side of that, to really report on that. I think one of the things I really find is once you do set that up, you learn a heck of a lot after, even if you didn't like theorize about what exactly I want to track and why and what's going on. Even the process of setting this up and then getting some data, and then if coming back a few weeks later, you're going to learn things about the way the website is set up that you may not have thought about in the past. And so doing this, I think, is just an important aspect of that ongoing maintenance and ongoing value that you're going to deliver for your clients, right, Jeremy?
Yeah. And I mentioned, I mean, we didn't want to get too in the weeds, here. But it is important to note. I'm probably scaring folks with the fact that I keep saying that GA4 takes a lot of setup, but there is one nice thing that Google did, which is that there are what's called enhanced measurement, and that is automatically tracked. You don't have to set that up. So Google,
Yep.
GA4 out of the box is actually tracking what they call enhanced measurement. And so, you can actually go in, make sure, you go in and find enhanced measurements and check that out, because enhanced measurements are being tracked. Enhanced measurements are basically allowing you to track conversion. Russ, you mentioned that earlier. That's really one of the keys here, and that is being tracked. So get in there and check it out. Make sure these are all toggled on, for a particular data stream.
Yeah.
Um,
So those are things. These are things that like GA does automatically. In addition to this, when you're using Duda, we apply a lot of the extra, tracking that might be necessary, or extra events that happen on the website directly. So those are the things where you can then go and set up, custom conversion events and track that. Even apply, like, GA allows you to apply a dollar value to a conversion event. If you know that the average customer is worth $100, you can say, okay, great, what does that entire funnel look like, and what's my ROI look like for each one of these visitors coming through? GA can kind of give you those rough ROI calculations as part of the product if you're using some of those conversion events that are tracked. So
yeah, it's funny, Andy mentioned, and I'm using it and I like it more. I can find what I want to see. And you kind of said something, I kind of see it as like GA4 is more intuitive, it's like, whereas in UA, your report types, you had audience, acquisition, behavior, conversion. Now you have acquisition, engagement, monetization, and retention, right? So just think about the difference of how much more Google has thought about the whole customer journey, where it goes from acquisition all the way to retention. And like you said, the ability to track on monetization by, putting an average dollar amount. So it is a lot more intuitive. You do have to get used to it, but as you start to use it, you're like, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I've found that myself too, that it does once you get over the initial hurdle, it does start to make more sense.
Yeah. I wanted to go back quickly and answer a question from T, who asked, Duda has stats on the platform. Will Duda be integrating data from GA4? And so the short answer is probably not in the short term. We have our own stats that we track and we report on, and there's a little analytics dashboard in Duda that's completely separate from Google Analytics. So we don't have a plan to actually go back and pull in data from Google Analytics. So I think that the short answer is no, maybe in the future, but right now that's not the way it's built. We're not pulling data from Google directly.
Yeah. And we're still, like I said, for us, we're not an SEO analytics tool, right? Like Google, we're an audit tool. So the answer is actually very similar with us. There's no point in logging into, the WooRank app inside of Duda to check out your Google Analytics, right? You actually you're logging in to analyze the structure of the website itself. And so we actually have some universal reports in WooRank today, but moving forward, it doesn't make a lot of sense to include a lot of GA4 because GA4 is so custom. There aren't a lot of canned reports that people are just going to expect and be used to, like universal.
Yeah. I think there's like the high level, just like organic versus paid versus social traffic, those things. But after that, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
Christy asked this question a little bit earlier, and I wanted to answer it, asking, what's your favorite places to get training on GA4? So like some places that I've learned is I've just gone to YouTube and looked up a bunch of videos. It's kind of random, but for topics that I've wanted to go and learn about, I found Duda did an excellent webinar a little while back that you can go and look at as well. So go and check that out. Udemy also has a full course on it too, if you're curious of looking at that. I will say also, like a lot of the kind of the marketing blogs that are out there, like Search Engine Land, Marketing Land, some of these guys have done a pretty good job of covering GA4 as well, and so I've learned from those places personally. Jeremy, I don't know about you, but that's where
those are all good. There's so much information. The one tip I will give you is you do have to understand GA4 has been out for quite some time, and so just make sure the video you're watching is recent, because if you're watching something that's 2 years old, it shifted over the last 2 years since it's been out, and you don't want to look at dated information because it might even be, early on, it might even have been about some of the beta things that Google was doing. So just make sure it's pretty recent uh, material.
I think that's good advice for a lot of things. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, a lot of people don't realize, you do a search and you pull up GA4 and it's a year and a half old, and you think it's relevant. The thing is it's been rolling out, and Google Google does that a lot. They roll things out and they modify it as they go. So with GA4 in particular, I ran into some older videos that we're actually talking about things that aren't even there anymore. So,
yeah.
I'm just looking here at some notes of what I wanted to cover, and I mean we've covered everything. I mean, this was really meant to just be a kind of a high level. What do you need to do? How do you need to get involved? And to make sure you've got 120 days to jump in and get started.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention, and this is recent news, is that Google has started auto migrating some kind of properties over to GA4. And what that means is they're saying like, okay, great, you have this old universal, I'm just going to switch you over to the new one and start tracking data that way. And you might lose historical data if that happens. And so if you're planning to make this transition, it might be worth going into Google Analytics now and even just like saying, hey, like don't do this auto migration. You can go in and set that up and say, hey, like I am going to do this. So you may want to double check that you're not, by waiting, you're not shooting yourself in the foot and having this auto migration happen where Google is just moving customers over automatically into the new system directly there. So just be cautious of that as this change is happening, right? Google has been, warning people about this for several years, and the time is finally coming where the change is real. And so they're really starting the process of trying to move a lot of customers out of the GA accounts over to this new system, and they're migrating. So just make sure that you jump on that and don't let them auto migrate you if you're not ready yet to do so.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I forgot about that. They are doing that.
Yeah. One question kind of topic I thought would be interesting is one thing we get questions a lot at Duda is just about Google Tag Manager in general. And so Duda doesn't have like a native integration with Tag Manager or anything similar, but we do see a lot of our customers using Tag Manager. And I think it's a great way to deploy this. And so if you want to deploy, Google Analytics through Tag Manager and use other tracking mechanisms, I think that is a wonderful path that we see quite a lot of our customers going down as well. And there's not a lot of issues there. You just need to copy and paste the Tag Manager code into the Duda website. So if you're wanting to do that,
yeah. We touched on it. We touched on the fact that GA4 integrates pretty seamlessly, obviously seamlessly with BigQuery and with Data Studio. I'm just curious if you know any other analytics packages out there that Duda customers perhaps use. I mean, there's Adobe Analytics. I mean, it's kind of funny. Everybody just assumes there's only Google Analytics.
Yeah.
I've actually heard some small businesses say, you know what, I tried GA4, it's so complicated, and they just went with like a Matomo, which is an open source analytics package. Yep. So I was just curious if there were other analytics packages that you heard Duda customers using.
Yeah, there's several. I mean, there's actually a bunch. So where I would start is one is actually Microsoft released their Google Analytics competitor called Clarity. And it does a lot of the similar tracking that's out there. I think it's an interesting product to go and look at. One of the unique things about it is it does like heat map tracking on the website, so you can follow along and see where people are clicking, what are those most clicked elements, blah blah blah, and kind of incorporate that in. So that's one that I've kind of seen pop up. It's a fairly new product. I think it's been out for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years from Microsoft, but they're kind of going down the path and kind of competing along with Google here. There's a lot of kind of privacy friendly analytics solutions out there. Andy, yeah, and Clarity is free. That's very true. a lot of privacy friendly, analytics like Plausible. Duda just launched an integration with a company called Squeaky Analytics, which does a lot of these things as well, and kind of has more advanced tracking. Momato is another one. You just reference it. Used to be called Piwik. There's a lot of analytics tools out there now. I think it's a really interesting space, just because there's so many custom solutions that are really available now. So,
yeah, and I just, I was just trying to point out. I mean, yeah, GA4 is great, but it is more complicated to use, and I think it has forced some businesses to say, I don't know, maybe this is the time where I just switch entirely to something else.
Yeah. And, do you really want all of your data going to Google, right? They have so much other information. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
It's a fair question, right? Like, in competition's definitely a good thing. And you can see the competition is pushing Google to really evolve in this space, right? So I think it's, it's healthy change that's going on here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Andy is saying to Sandra, I'm just trying to replicate what I've done in the past in old GA and GA4. And the only downside is, year-on-year completion reports. The data is just not there yet. Yeah, that's very true, right? You don't have that year-over-year analytics because you lose it when you make the switch over to GA4. That'll come back though, and give it a little bit of time. You can still go and look, obviously, see the historical numbers and make sure that it's there, but in the old system. But yeah, and it's definitely a downside of switching to GA4 is not having that historical data ready to go. Yeah. Great. Any other questions from the audience here? Andy, you asked a little bit earlier, do you think the old GA will flatline from July 1st? I don't know. I think it's, Google is really trying to push people over the line. They kind of say that, hey, it's not going to be available anymore. My guess is they'll, kind of keep it active. Maybe they'll extend it. I'm not really sure. Jeremy, what do you think?
They usually extend it 1 or 2 times, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe.
I've been involved in a few migration projects like this, and usually those timelines get extended. I mean, Google's given plenty of time and plenty of tools, and hopefully the right level of knowledge to the industry to make this switch. But we're not Google, so we don't know exactly what they're thinking there.
Yeah. Well, similar to how we started the conversation with everything is really exciting right now in digital. This too adds to that, and I mentioned it earlier that to me, I think a whole new level of understanding from marketers about how to track their customers is really we're going to see. So you couple that with the exciting things that are happening, like introducing AI. I really think I know we're anticipating, working with our customers with the WooRank app on, what do marketers really want to track now, and what are they going to start? What are they going to start tracking, and what are we going to start learning from that with GA4, and then how's that going to reflect in our own product roadmap, with WooRank and what we can introduce in terms of the audits that we're doing.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting, right? I think landing page reports are going to be probably a big part of that. Is where's traffic coming in, and what do they do once they get on that page, and how can WooRank audit for kind of conversion paths of, okay, great, the most customers that convert on a site, they go from X page to the contact page. How do you get more folks to the contact page and drive those conversions? Like, I think those type of insights will be really interesting. And, auditing, saying, hey, like maybe you need a link higher on the page, or you need a more prominent button, or you need, different ways of navigating the website, or, it's not clear how users get there, but you're seeing a lot of conversions. I think there's a lot of interesting paths that you can learn as you start to dig in on what is that experience data coming from. And I think a lot of tools are you're right, they're going to have to adapt as people become a little bit smarter and more knowledgeable of what the heck is going on top of the sites. Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. Any questions that you guys want answered, kind of about GA4 or analytics in general, please go ahead and put those in the chat. We're happy to answer and happy to get to those. Jeremy, one question I have for you is, I'd love to hear, you used to work at an agency in your days before Bridgeline and, a while back. What are those type of reporting packages that you would put together and kind of share with customers, or what in general would you recommend for agencies out there thinking about, sharing reporting with their customers?
Well, yeah, we kind of touched on it, around, an agency really wants to get to, an agency is really not being asked to, produce an SEO optimized page. It's really being asked to drive business, right? I don't call an agency and say, hey, I really want to make sure that my page score is really high in an SEO auditing tool, right? That's I want more traffic in my store, or I want more business, from my website. So to me, that's why I've been raising the questions. It's hard to answer that versus ask more questions about it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
How are you going to produce, a reporting solution to your customer that starts to incorporate the entire customer journey? You don't want to report on too much information. I mean, in my background, you actually really need to make sure you're reporting on the absolute key metrics. A lot of times, if you report on too many metrics, it actually can be very distracting, right? Because you actually start giving somebody reason to question other areas, versus focus in, on the goal itself, which is, we delivered this much traffic, but that converted into this much sales. So that kind of also goes back to the conversation we had of really, where do you begin? What are your goals? And the ability in GA4 to be able to, track even ROI, by assigning dollar figures. So to me, it's interesting to rethink, like what are the metrics I'm actually delivering? And what is it? Is it the metrics that really matter to the customer? And is it the metric that, I'm being evaluated on, as an agency? So that's also why I brought up Data Studio. We have seen some customers working with their agencies and on bringing not only their Google Analytics data into Studio, but some other data. And so, not to segue into like a full conversation around a BI tool, but I mean, Data Studio is a BI tool, and I've seen some very simple reporting where you can bring in your Google Analytics, but you could also pull in, even just a simple spreadsheet of data, or even get more sophisticated and bring in your POS data. And when you start layering that data together, that to me is very exciting. And, if that's where I would, suggest an agency look is, if you've only been looking at your Google, your website traffic, think about layering in something else on top of that and saying to the customer, yes, we brought in this traffic, but we also see that your in-store, new customers went up. Well, that's us,
Yeah.
Or I saw returning customers, and we're doing a campaign right now to your current customers, so that kind of data, going in and asking customers about, say, POS data and saying, what is your, new customer analytics versus your existing customer look like? What is your revenue, each day and each month look like? And can we layer that into ours? I think that's really exciting stuff. And I think agencies need to think about that if they're not tying, their activity to the actual money that they're bringing into to the business.
Yeah, kind of looking at the full funnel there, right? How do you go from they search for something, they clicked on a link to get to you, understanding if maybe they abandoned the website at some point, but then later hopefully came in person. It's going to be hard to track individuals across that, but you can track trends across that, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing a pickup in people coming in to individual stores and purchasing and looking at that full offline to or online to offline, kind of funnel, if you want to call it that, or path. I think that's a good call out of really trying to drive to what is actually getting people in the door and purchasing your product, right? Yeah. Product, service, whatever it is. Yeah.
It's true, and you do have to get comfortable with not knowing precisely, but looking at trends. But there's really, I had to learn that myself as a small business owner. I owned Sport Clips hair salons, and when corporate is driving a huge initiative, right, and I see my in-store traffic go up, is the attribution actually there? No.
No.
But when you look at year over year and they ran a major campaign and your traffic went up, it's hard not to be able to correlate that.
Yeah.
So I just think, yes, attribution is tough. I agree. But thinking of, like you said, the whole funnel, I think is going to be more and more important, because that's, like I said, ultimately, you are, you have to focus on the ROI, right? You have to focus on, somebody handed you $1, did you return $2 to them? Whether that's a new customer on the website, somebody who converted, and filled out a form, or whether you actually got somebody in the door of a physical store. Ultimately, if I'm handing you $1, are you handing me $1 back, or $2 or $3? And I think that's going to be more and more important as we move ahead, because the analytics, based on everything we just talked about, is the analytics are there where other agencies are going to be able to start reporting on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one interesting kind of point to make here related is, I think it's important to try and, collect data on your customers, trying to get them to fill in, their email address so you can market to them later, collect that, what's called first party data, make sure that you can, market to these people more directly, because, what's changing in the industry right now with, cookies and analytics data, all of this, is that you have a hard time tracking of, hey, they saw an ad on social, they came to my website, they filled in something on my website, then I know that later they went and purchased something. Tracking and attributing that one-to-one relationship is really hard. If you start having that first party data and having an email address and a way you can kind of track them, you can start to do that one-to-one attribution a little bit better. So one kind of common strategy I've seen is, okay, great, as soon as I get people onto my website, is I want to start building a relationship with them directly. And that is, starting email campaigns, it's getting them to subscribe to something, building those kind of ongoing, marketing tools that add value over time is a very frequent kind of tactic that's really coming out now. And, the industry is changing a lot here, right? Google's going to be getting rid of the third-party cookie, and Apple has already dropped a lot of their tracking capabilities. So, trying to collect that first-party data is going to be critical for a lot of small businesses to build that brand, going forward. So, yeah.
It's funny. Somebody said it to me this way once. I love it. Is we're talking about not tracking personal identifiable information, right? We're talking about privacy, and somebody said it this way. If what do you actually really want as a marketer? Do you want to know that John bought a small size t-shirt and Lisa bought a medium-sized t-shirt? Or do you just want to know that I sold this many smalls and this many mediums and this many larges? That's the difference between, knowing the trend of what you're doing versus the actual personal information, and I don't know if I need to know that John bought a small, versus how many smalls, how many mediums, how many larges. And that is where we're headed, right? Because we are not going to be tracking as much PII data, and we are going to have to rely on. That's why Google is introducing predictive AI into GA4, right? Is because it's literally going to have to start using trending data to fill in the gaps of what we don't have. But the point is do you actually need to know? Now, it's different if you want to actually build a relationship and know that John just bought a small. That's fine for nurturing. But from a macro level, if you do understand the trends and GA4 can help fill in gaps, yes, it's good to know that I know I sell more smalls and mediums in certain seasons, and that information, I think marketers are going to be able to know.
Yeah, it's kind of like using AI to like say like, you know what? I think this purchase was attributed to this source. They don't know it, but they can kind of, use AI to predict that, hey, these things came through, and we're not actually knowing individual people, but they're guessing that it was likely from a source or from a campaign or from, whatever type of marketing activity that's driving people to the app, to the website, to the whatever. I think it's a really interesting future to be looking at of why GA is making these changes and what the longer term looks like.
Yeah. I think our guesses are going to get a lot better over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, we're running out of time here. We've got about 5 minutes left. Any last minute, insights, tips, things that you want to share, or anything that you're looking forward to kind of changing, alongside this?
Well, is it fair to give a shameless plug on WooRank at this time?
Absolutely, go for it.
So this is actually right out of the Duda app store that you can go in and install WooRank, and alongside everything we just talked about with regards to a GA4, this is actually a whole different set of data. So it'd be interesting to hear people's feedback if you go in and you are running GA4 and you're looking at understanding what's happening on the site, versus go check out WooRank and run an analysis on the website itself. I mentioned earlier, Duda does a tremendous job of delivering a tool that you can build a great website, but it's almost like saying, well, but there's so many different aspects of SEO that you have to think about when you're publishing a page, and there's so many different things you got to click on inside of Duda, or any software where you're building a website. There are several places you have to go to make sure that you're following SEO best practice, and that's really what we're doing, right? Is we're saying, hey, great job on building this website, but here are some things you could actually improve. So, and it's a different set of data. And the reason I bring it up is it's different than looking at the analytics of a site, right? And a lot of people mistake. They're like, well, wait, WooRank, it's SEO. Well, I mean, can I just go into some Google product and see how I'm doing there? And the answer is no. I mean, you actually need an SEO auditing tool that looks at the website independently.
Yeah, it's really cool, like how it's directly inside of Duda, and you're getting that feedback, immediately when you start to use kind of the WooRank product inside of Duda. So one of the things I really like about it is that it, you don't have to click out and kind of leave the platform. For a lot of historical, audits or a lot of other tools, you have to like go into a different tab, view the report. You don't really know what the audit means. Is it relevant? Can you fix it inside of Duda? Can you not? A lot of those things have kind of been solved with this SEO, integration that we've done with WooRank, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Great, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining here today and giving some insights on analytics and GA4 and kind of the switch. One thing I'm just going to promote on the Duda side is we have a big webinar coming up at the end of the month with Fabrice from Microsoft. He's kind of I think he's like a principal product manager in charge of search, along with Barry Schwartz, Lily Ray, and a few other folks from the industry are going to be joining us. And so we're really excited about that webinar. If you should go register for it right now you can find it under the webinars link on duda.co. Really excited to have those folks joining and getting this going. And again, Jeremy, thank you for joining, and thank you for being a great partner of Duda along the way.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, look forward to seeing everybody on that next webinar. That is going to be exciting. I'm going to go sign up for that one right now.
Seriously, I'm like, I need to talk to Anton and get myself in there. I'm like, how do I get in there? I want to be part of it. Yeah. Yeah.